today we are diving headfirst into the, let's face it, totally broken world of buying tickets for live shows. And we're going to look at a brand new effort to fix what a massive government settlement, well, left behind. This quote, wow, it just nails it, doesn't it? The Department of Justice came in and was supposed to fix the whole ticketing mess. They opened a door, but they didn't really think about who would be guarding it. And that created this huge accountability vacuum. So this explainer, it's all about what's stepping in to fill that exact gap. Okay, so before we could even get to the proposed solution, we have to get on the same page about the problem. And look, I'm not just talking about your personal horror story of trying to buy tickets. We're talking about the cold, hard facts, the stuff that was documented, verified, and laid out for everyone to see in a court of law. I mean, we've all lived this nightmare, right? You show up right at 10 a.m., you're hitting refresh for an hour, and somehow you end up paying $300 for a $75 ticket. The thing you have to get, though, is that this isn't just bad luck. It was by design. It was the result of a system with very specific documented flaws. And here they are, the failures of the system laid bare. You've got these hidden fees that can jump the price by like 30%, but only at the very end. You had companies knowingly letting bots and scalpers run wild because, hey, it made them money. Artists were getting strong-armed into using certain services, or they couldn't play at certain venues. And independent venues, they were getting locked into these awful exclusive contracts. Again, these aren't just angry tweets. These were documented business practices. So here's the bottom line. None of this was a secret. These aren't just opinions. We're talking about court-documented, FTC-verified, Senate-testified facts. The evidence was just overwhelming, which, is why everyone was expecting this huge, groundbreaking fix from the government. Which brings us to the government's fix. Or maybe their incomplete fix. The Department of Justice announced this big settlement that made all the headlines. But for a lot of people inside the industry, and especially for fan advocates, it didn't feel like enough, not even close. So the big number they threw around was $280 million. And yeah, on the surface, that sounds like a massive fine, right? A real slap on the wrist. But as with anything in the world of big business, you gotta look at the context. And here's the context. That $280 million fine, for them, that's about 4 days of revenue. 4 days. Suddenly, it doesn't look like a punishment anymore, does it? It just looks like a cost of doing business. This was definitely not the huge systemic change people were hoping for. And you know what? It wasn't just fans or advocates who were shaking their heads. 27 U.S. states refused to sign on to the settlement. We're talking big ones too, like New York and California. Their top lawyers, the attorneys general, basically said, nope, this isn't good enough. This doesn't actually protect people. So let's break down what this settlement actually did versus what it didn't do. On the one hand, yeah, it opened the market up a bit to new competitors. It capped some fees at some venues. But look at the other side. It did not mandate all-in transparent pricing. It didn't stop the bots. It didn't protect artists' control over their own work. And most importantly, it didn't guarantee that any venue would actually treat you, the fan, fairly. And this quote right here, this is the absolute crux of the whole thing. Antitrust law is about restoring competition. It's not about guaranteeing fairness. Those are two totally different things. So the government basically said, okay, you guys can compete now. But it left it up to the market to figure out how to be fair. And that right there is the gap we're talking about. So into this gap steps a new independent group. They saw what the government settlement was missing, and they decided to build that accountability layer themselves. They're introducing a new standard called Front Row Certified. So what is Front Row Certified? Well, think of it like an organic certification for food, but for music venues. It's a voluntary, audited seal of approval that tells you, hey, this place is committed to being fair. It's a signal to fans and artists that this venue or this ticketing company has met a high, verifiable standard. And this part is absolutely critical. It has to be earned. You can't just buy it. So how do you learn it? Well, anyone who applies has to pass a pretty tough audit based on these 5 pillars. And if these look familiar, they should. Number 1, price transparency. You see the full price up front. 2, real protection against bots and scalpers. 3, artist autonomy, so they actually control their own sales. 4, non-exclusive ticketing, so venues aren't trapped. And 5, a resale policy that's actually for fans, not scalpers. These directly attack every single one of those court-documented problems we talked about. Okay, but let's be real. Building and maintaining a system like this, an independent, audited system to create trust, that costs money. It's not free. Which brings us to the big question. How is this whole accountability thing funded? What's the business model? And it's a completely fair question to ask, right? The last thing anyone wants is just another fee tacked onto a ticket. We're all sick of fees. So let's look at the numbers. Let's look at the structure and see if this is actually different. All right, so here's how it works. There's an application fee, and it's tiered. A small club with a capacity under 2,500 people pays way less than the giant arena. That seems fair. But the most important part isn't the amount. It's what that money is actually for. And this right here is the absolute key to the whole thing. You are not paying for the certification. The fee pays for the audit. It covers the cost of the independent investigative work required to see if a venue or platform actually meets the standard. Payment doesn't guarantee you pass. Think about it. Whether you pass or fail, the work still has to be done. That's what the fee covers, and that's what keeps the whole thing legitimate. Yeah, this really sums it up. A certification that costs nothing to run is worth, well, nothing. For this seal to actually mean something, for it to build real trust, the process behind it has to be serious. It has to be independent. And that cost? That's what ensures the audit has real teeth. And to make sure it stays legitimate, look at who's on the governing board. It's not just one group running the show. You have a seat for an insurance partner, an independent platform, an artist advocate, and a fan advocate. It's a multi-stakeholder board designed specifically so that no single interest can take over and corrupt the standard. This is also a really interesting and important detail. The whole thing is set up as a for-profit LLC, like a standards body, not a nonprofit. Why? Because it allows them to be completely self-funded. They're not chasing grants or taking donations from companies who might have, an agenda. It's all about independence. And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. The government settlement kicked open a door. Front Row Certified is meant to be the one standing there, deciding who actually deserves to walk through it. It's the quality control this new, open market desperately needs. So, the standard is here. The model seems transparent. The framework for a much fairer market is officially on the table. But will anyone actually use it? Will the market, the fans, the artists, the venues, choose to adopt it? That's the real question, isn't it? The foundation is built, but the next chapter, well, that's up to them.